All right, good evening. So we get started. We've got Liz as our timekeeper here, so we,
Yeah, I'm a tough.
just gotta keep it moving.
7 o'clock.
Thank you for coming tonight. We've got a very special guest talking about splits and swarm prevention with Mandy Shaw. She's coming right up. I'm gonna let her introduce herself, and she really needs no introduction at this point. We have it. She's gonna switch to it next.
How many minutes for questions?
Here's our new format. We thought we'd mix it up a little bit. A little more time for discussion, shorter window for the speaker, longer window for questions, and beers next door afterwards. So 8 to whenever. So February beekeeping notes. Brian's got a handout. I will go get that handout because it's in my car. And then he's going to talk about yellow jacket control.
Do you want to do it, Brian, or do you want me to talk about yellow jackets?
What?
I made a fun little, if you go to the next. So do you want, I'll go for it, Brian, because I did this for him and that might confuse you. Brian was saying that because we have the really warm weather right now, the queens of the yellow jackets are out. So the life cycle of the yellow jacket is up on the screen. And right now, those overwinter queens, they were dormant over the winter. They're coming out and they're trying to find a nest site. And that is the nest site where they, in the summer, will grow their colony. And so if you can get the queens now by, if you go back a slide, we have, if you put out those yellow traps, you can get the queens now. And then, sorry, Brian, we'll go back to the circle. So in the summer, they're going to grow their colonies and they'll forage on nectar and bees, pollen. And they also will go after your bees and the larvae to feed their larvae. So the adult yellow jackets eat nectar and the baby yellow jackets, the larvae, they need protein. So in the late summer, when there's the nectar dearth, that's when, if you have huge colonies of yellow jackets, those yellow jackets will really go after your hive. They'll try to go inside and get the honey. They'll try to go inside and get the larvae, and they'll pick off your bees in front of the hive. And then they all die, and another queen overwinters, and the life cycle continues. So hence spring, you can put the traps out now and maybe prevent some of those massive colonies near your house.
And Brian's full lecture on that is on the website.
Yes.
From a previous.
It has a lot more details.
Yeah, very extensive.
Brian, how many traps?
It kind of depends on your area. I have 2 I put up, and there's 2 products that you need to get at the bottom. There's a little canister that lasts for 10 weeks, and that's an attractant, and you replace that. And then there's a liquid that you can put on a cotton ball, and that's good for 4 weeks. So figure about every month and a half, you're going to rebait and lubricate the attractant, and just put them up as quick as you can, because usually you put out the traps around the 1st of March. But with this crazy winter we've had, where we really haven't had winter, I've seen queen bumblebees out. And the yellow jacket queens are going to be out any day. We've got a few days of rain coming up, but all it takes is one nice warm day and those queens are going to be out. And if you can catch them now, you're golden for saving your bees in the fall.
Do you buy stuff like any nursery or any like home?
Any hardware store has it.
Okay, yeah. Even Fred Meyer. Thank you.
Just to refresh you on the board members, I'm the president, Brian. VP's Laura Johnson here. Treasurer's Brian Fackler. Education and events is Rochelle, right here, brand new to serve this year. Board and Public Affairs, Jessica, we're here.
Which will be open next year. That spot will be open next year if anyone is interested in it. Let me.
Yes, absolutely. Librarian is Katie Fackler. She's got a nice little Instagram you can take a look at. Carl Strobe is member at large. He's got something else tonight. And Jana Patterson's our apiary manager. And then we have an open position, fundraising and grant writing, if you'd like to join us. We need volunteers for the task force. Talk to Brian afterwards about this for additional details. We've got B School coming up February 28th and got more on that. And then next month, Charlie Van de Heuvel talking about proactive versus reactive beekeeping. And then April 1st, Cheryl Wright, bee sting allergies with Dewey Karen. So B School is Saturday. I don't, oh, am I in the way? This for a beginning beekeeper. You can sign up online. It's 5 hours of instruction. It's a great deal. They're still taking people. So sign up on the website. Talk to me if you have any trouble with it. And then the apiary starts back up in March. You can get your hands in the bees right away. Jana will help you out. It's in the most beautiful location, right under the St. John's Bridge. It's amazing. I mean, truly a great spot. And support pub. You get a swarm list, which we're going to be talking about next month. Bee buddy program, bee days at the apiary, the library, and equipment rental, all for $25. Okay, I'm going to hand this over to Mandy.
Question? Yeah, question that. I got a quick question.
Okay.
I got a notice from the Oregon State Beekeepers Association, my dues are due, and I understood the public can take care of that. What's the-
Yeah, you don't have to do that. And Mandy will hear about
Yeah,
that.
we can talk about that. I had a feeling that might come up.
And over to you, Mandy. I'm gonna,
Okay.
what am I gonna do? Participants, more. Okay, you are now the host.
Okay, awesome. So was that Bruce Kester that I heard in the background asking that question?
Yes.
I would know Bruce anywhere. So the question was about OSBA renewals for the membership. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in October at the OSBA conference at the general membership meeting, a new membership structure was voted in, which basically onboards a lot more members to OSBA. So all affiliate club members are automatically granted a complimentary membership to the OSBA. And so in the process of us getting ready for that, we have built a new website. We have a much more powerful database now. And I and the treasurer and the secretary have been basically uploading all of the contacts that the affiliates are giving us. And so you should have received a welcome email from OSBA showing you how to log into your account. But if you are having any trouble, let me know. I can help guide you through that. The new website is pretty cool because it has membership forums. So it's sort of like a Facebook, but it's private and it's only for OSBA members. And the ticketing system for buying tickets for the conference is much more sophisticated and it's just a much nicer thing. But for you, you don't have to worry about renewing your OSBA dues. Just renew with your affiliate association. They will let us know and we will get our records updated, usually on the weekends.
All right.
All right. Any other questions about OSBA before we move on? All right. Excellent. Well, I have 2 talks prepared for us tonight, but I know we have kind of limited time. And so I'm going to start with my slideshow about doing splits because fundamentally doing splits is swarm prevention, but we are going to talk a little bit about swarming biology. Just to give you guys an idea of like where I got started in beekeeping, Well, I took Portland Urban Beekeepers Bee School back in 2015. So I've just wrapped up my 10th year with bees. I manage about 30 colonies on average, and I've been able to grow my operation through splits and swarms. I only purchased nukes my very first year in beekeeping, and so if I can do it, you can do it too. At its core, beekeeping is really about good resource management. And once you get a good hold of all of how all these pieces go together, it does become easier to maintain your colonies to a point where they can easily overwinter. But when we think about all the resources, of course, the bees, but we also have to think about the forage that's available for them. Integrative pest management, or IPM, is really, really important. Even if you are treatment free, there should be some kind of IPM that you're engaging with your bees to help them mitigate varroa. But really, all of these things come into play. And so I just like to think about it as managing a business with all of the different elements that go into it. And when you can break free from buying bees, then your beekeeping truly does become sustainable. And understanding their life cycles. So like right now, we've just passed winter solstice, and I look at winter solstice as the marker for when our queens start laying eggs again. And this winter has been truly exceptionally warm. Last year, we also had a warm winter. So that means the bees are going to start building up faster. They kind of start ramping up right along with the temperatures and as the blooms start coming on. And last year, swarm season hit pretty hard. And for me, it was the earliest I was ever able to get into my colonies. I started inspecting in February, and I've never done that before. And if I wasn't at work today, you better believe I would have been checking on my bees. So when we look at them and when we plan to split, we have to sort of work with their natural tendencies. And so understanding what they're doing throughout the seasons is a big part of that. So when we're getting ready to split our hives, we really need to look at their resources. Looking at the weather forecast, especially if you're planning on letting your bees raise their own queens, because you have to anticipate what kind of mating weather they're going to have. So I obsessively check the forecast and long-term predictions when I'm getting ready to make splits. But we also really need to think about, are there enough drones for her to mate with? So in this slide, this is a nice example of some worker brood, a capped brood that's nice and flat and flush to the frame. And then right next to it, we have some drone brood that's more protruding or kind of looks like Kix cereal. When your bees start making a lot of drone brood, that is your first indication that they are already thinking about queen production and swarming. So when we see this happen, we can start making our plans to split our hives. But another thing is, if your hive overwintered, but they're small, you don't want to split them because they're just going to be too small to survive it. So you really need to have a full hive of bees to be able to successfully split them. So in the springtime, we have lots of workers being hatched out because the queen's been laying eggs, drones production, and they're definitely thinking about queens. And when I say urge to swarm, I really truly mean it. Bees want to swarm. They are designed to do it. It's a really important part of their biological cycles. It's part of their reproduction. And so I like to try and catch them just before they start making swarm cells, because once they start that process, it's really hard to get them to change their minds. And then in our hive bodies themselves, as the early nectar flow comes on, for us, the first really big nectar flow is the big leaf maple. And that is a flow that the bees can build a lot of comb off of. So you can add more space to help suppress their urge to swarm, give them space to build out new combs, give them things to keep them busy so they're not focused on being crowded and wanting to swarm, if that makes sense. But we also have this weird thing in the Pacific Northwest where our bees start to grow and get really big, and we have these warm early temperatures and things start to bloom, but then we can have a total drop in temperatures and these long periods of rain where the bees can't get out and forage. And this is where we run into the risk of starvation, because our bees have already begun brooding up. They've already started, making babies. They've got a lot more mouths to feed. And so that the resources that they're bringing in each day that they can go out and forage are often being consumed right away. And so when they're at that point where their daily intake of forage is really critical, and then we get a bunch of cold, wet weather and they can't get out and forage, they can starve really, really fast. So definitely this is the time to really keep an eye on them for that. Colonies are a lot easier to work with in the spring because there's a lot of nurse bees, a lot of young bees. They're not dealing with dearth. They're not dealing with yellow jackets. And so you might find your bees that were so sweet and wonderful in the springtime might become more defensive later in the summer. That's completely normal. Just enjoy the nice bees in the spring while you can. So I don't like to buy bees. That's just my personal preference. I like to allow the bees to raise their own queens, but there are some pluses and minuses to doing that. If you buy queens, that's fine. It's perfectly fine. If you are able to buy locally raised queens, that's healthier for the local bee population. And there are some pluses to introducing a mated queen to your split. And we'll go over that a little bit later on. When you let your bees raise their queen naturally, they are not going to have any population increase for almost 2 months. It takes about 1 month from the queen to go from an egg to a mated laying queen. And then you're looking at another 21 days for that first brood cycle to hatch. So if you are wanting to split for the sole purpose of getting big hives right away for the honey flow, you'd probably want to go with a mated queen that you can just introduce to your colony. And then when you're getting ready to split, you have to look at the parent colony, the hive that you're pulling those resources from, and see if they have enough of a workforce to withstand that long interruption in brood production. You can split your hive all the way until probably June. I would personally not go any farther than that. So you have to look at where you're at in the season, what blooms are available, drone population, and those things. And then going back to purchased queens, sometimes it's nice if you hear about a bee strain that somebody's breeding and you want to introduce those genetics to your apiary, that's a really good way to do it. It's also a more risk-free way to split because a lot of things can happen to your queen. And if you let the bees raise their own, She might get eaten by a bird when she goes out on her mating flight. She might not mate well. So if you're buying a mated queen, it's more of a sure bet. And if you decide to do a late season split, buying a purchase queen is really the way to go for that. Let's see if this little thing will go. So if you're going to raise your own queens, you can start to look for queen cells. These are swarm cells. So swarm cells are typically on the outer edges of the frame. When the bees are getting ready to swarm, they will put a lot of these. They'll probably do 24 or more swarm cells if it's a really big hive. But if you start to see those cells, you can just peek inside of them and look for an egg. You can look for a larva, or you would see like a milky substance, which is royal jelly. And the thing about swarm cells, if your hive is getting ready to swarm, you have to catch it before these cells get capped off. When they cap them off, that means the mother queen and half your hive are going to swarm because they don't want to run the risk of any of these new baby queens coming out and killing the mother queen. And so if you open your hive and you see this, you have a decision to make. You can pull this frame and a couple other frames of brood and some honey and some pollen and make a split. You can cut out some of these cells and divide them up if you're making any number of splits. Or just know if you leave it, your hive will swarm. Can you guys hear that okay?
No. No.
No, you can't hear that. Let me see if I can do the setting. So this is a freshly hatched queen. And she noticed the workers aren't paying that much attention to her. And this is important as I progress through this story. When the queens first hatch out, they walk around the hive piping, or they use their body like a kazoo, and they're looking for other queens. And so the queens that have not hatched yet or have just hatched along with her, they will call to each other so that they can duke it out and one of them becomes the queen of the hive. But I want to go back to, and this is important for when you are making splits and raising your own queens. How do you tell if your queen is mated or not? Well, this is one of the clues right there. And you can see how these bees, they're not really that excited about her. And she can just kind of walk around and they're not, they're not circling around her. So that's indicator number one that your queen is a virgin. So this is a queen that has just mated probably in the last 2 days or so. And just notice the difference in how the bees are responding to her. They've made a nice circle around her. They're very, very excited. They use their antennas and their mouth parts to basically get her hormones on them so they can rub her hormones throughout the hive. And so this was a split, and that queen had mated. She had not started laying yet, but after she mates, her body needs a few days, then she'll start laying, but they can tell the difference if she's mated or not. So that's one indication to look for if you're not sure if your queen has mated yet. All right, so definitely choosing the right time to split your hive. You want to work with their biology and with the weather, not against it. I like to split. I like walkaway splits. So a walkaway split is basically you can take a double deep colony and just split it in half, put one box next to the other, and come back a month later. And if all goes well, both sides will have a queen. But if you want to be more targeted about it, you can either split with the mother queen, take her out of the hive and put her in another box. This is a nice way to do it because the hive that will be making its new queen gets to keep all of the field bees. So all of the foragers and that population remains with the hive that's preparing a new queen. And that's more true to what they would be doing if they were swarming, right? The mother leaves with half the hive, the home hive makes the new queen, retains the field bees. But you can also take out a lot of eggs. If you find swarm cells, you can take those out and make splits with those also. So here's a picture that has a frame that has eggs and young larvae. You want to get as many eggs or super young larvae as possible because that's what the bees will be making their queen from. And you'll want to look for frames where and make sure that the larva is juicy and swimming in royal jelly. If they're dry, that's a symptom that your hive is not having they're not having enough nutrition. So you can feed a pollen patty if your larva is looking dry. Pollen patties stimulate the royal jelly producing glands for the nurse bees. And so if the nurse bees are well nourished, they can provide ample nourishment for the larva. And then in this other picture, that is a swarm cell, and you can see the little larva floating in it in a little bit of royal jelly. And sometimes you can find these just by doing a move called clamshelling your hive, where you basically, if you have two Langstroth deeps, if you lift one of the top one up and just pivot it up sideways, you could see these cells coming down. And that's just a quick way to do a swarm cell check on your bees. So before you split, of course, you got to make sure that they have plenty of bees. They've got, a healthy laying queen. If you're going to be splitting into an 8 or a 10 frame hive, that hive that you're pulling from, you got to make sure you kind of balance out those frames and resources. And you don't want to give your split so much space that they can't keep it warm. So I actually like to do splits into 4 or 5 frame boxes. That way I can insulate them. They're nice and tight in their space. They don't have a lot of space to patrol and manage. It's just better for their thermoregulation. And that's better for brood production, conservation of their their energy and their resources. And you really want your nuke that you make up to be full like this. So if you pull out frames and you put them into your nuke box or the new box that you're moving the bees into, and the frames are not covered like this, it's okay to shake some nurse bees into it. Nurse bees are young and friendly, and they will help to keep any brood warm. And so it just helps to fill up that space so they could be nice and toasty. So back at the parent hive, what I like to do is if I'm leaving the queen there, or this is the side of the split that has the queen, she doesn't need to have open brood. What she needs to have is capped brood, because all that capped brood is going to hatch out and she'll have a whole workforce of nurse bees to take care of all the eggs that she will lay. So for that side of the split, I do like to put more brood, more capped brood rather than having lots of eggs, because she doesn't need eggs, she needs nurse bees. And then I also like to make sure that they have frames of food, honey, pollen. If they don't have enough of that, you can feed them. When it's time to start splitting hives, it's warm enough to feed them sugar syrup. So you can feed them sugar syrup of a 1-to-1 ratio. You can feed them pollen patties, and that'll keep them nice and well fed and growing until the spring foods resources become much more stable. All right, so here's another example. So for the split that I pull from the larger hive, usually the outer frames will be your food frames. So you want to kind of mimic how they structure their nest in the bigger hive. So for this one, we've got 2 to 3 frames of brood. And that's a lot of eggs and larvae because this is the side that's going to be raising the queen. I've put extra nurse bees in there to, really bump up the population. And basically in these little plastic boxes, if you make splits in those, you'll want to insulate them because they're really not warm enough for your bees, especially if we get a little bit of a cold snap. So just putting some insulation on will definitely help. All right, so after you've done your split, this is when you will start losing sleep. You'll be pacing back and forth in your apiary, worrying about your bees. That's all normal stuff. But even for a seasoned beekeeper like myself, like it's stressful waiting for your nukes to make queens because so many things can happen. So you don't want to be getting in there every day. You want to maybe check every week or so. So if you are introducing a queen, you'll want to check after a few days and make sure that they've eaten through that candy plug and released her. If they haven't released that queen by day 3 or 4, open up the plug and let her out. By day 3 to 5, if you've made the nuke with frames of eggs, if they have not made a swarm cell or a queen cell in that time, they need another frame of eggs because the eggs have to be 1 to 3 days or a 1-day-old larva for them to be able to turn it into a queen. So if they haven't made a queen cell off of the eggs that you've given them, you can give them more. So the queen only takes about 16 days to develop and she'll hatch out. Her body needs time to harden before she can go out on her mating flight. So that can take a few days. When she goes out on her mating flight, when she comes back, she's not going to start laying right away. But when she does, that's usually on the 25 to 30 day mark. And so you really need to plan on not seeing any eggs for a full month, no matter how bad you want to see them. So if your split is looking a little bit weak, you would be seeing signs like these frames are not very covered in bees. You can tell this hive does not have a very dense population. So that's one symptom. Also, if they have comb that they need to be building and they're just not doing it, that can be they don't have enough workforce to dedicate to comb building. It can be they don't have enough food to stimulate their wax glands. They can also be really susceptible to robbing. So whatever box you put them in, you'll want to give them a defensible entrance. So you can put your entrance reducers on just to help them better regulate their temperature and better guard the entrance. And if you're not seeing a lot of foraging activity, that could be an indication. So giving them more nurse bees from a donor colony, giving them some food. And also, like I've found if my splits do so much better, especially if I'm doing the 5-frame nukes, if they are in a full sun scenario. If they're in kind of shady, in a shady spot and they're not getting the sun to like really help warm up the hive, they just take longer to get up and running. So that those things can definitely impact the success of your split. And sometimes things happen, you know, they don't make a queen, or the queen comes back from her mating flight and she hasn't really mated well. And so she's laying a lot of drone larvae. Sometimes the bees decide they don't like her. So one of the things that you would be seeing would be just a ton of drone brood in the split. In this picture, that you could see some spotty drone brood, tons of drones, and you could see one sad little emergency queen cell that the bees have made. At this point, they're not going to be able to make a queen. Whatever's going on there, the queen is a total loss. If this progresses any longer, it will turn into something called laying workers, which is the worker bees. Because there's not a queen there, we don't have the queen pheromones suppressing the worker bee ovaries. The worker bees will start to lay eggs. And once it gets to that point, there's really no fixing it. I don't know any beekeeper who's been able to successfully turn around a laying worker situation. If they're just too far gone at that point. But if you catch them before it gets to that point, you can add them back into the hive they came from. You can give them some more brood to try and raise a new queen. You can introduce a mated queen, which is probably, you know, your quickest action, because if you give them more eggs or larvae, it's just going to prolong, you know, and you have to think about the age of the bees. By then, you're not going to have any nurse bees to take care of any brood. So a quick fix would be giving them a mated queen or combining them with another hive. So, you know, beekeeping is not easy. There's a lot of moving parts, and something my dad has always said to me in life is you got to stay the course. You know, you got to think about what that end goal is. And I think for a lot of beekeeper, that end goal is to get your bees to overwinter. Because if they don't overwinter, you can't make the splits to successfully grow your operation. So just staying on top of your management, making sure they're really well fed, making sure that they have they can occupy their space really well. They can keep things like hive beetles and wax moths at bay, treating for mites. All of those things help your bees prepare for winter so that you can have springtime success with your bees. And then, of course, you got to think about what your beekeeping goals are. And I have to admit, I only made this slide because I wanted this picture to be up on the screen for you guys to see. This is a new queen. She is just learning the ropes of laying eggs, and she has not perfected the art of placing it in the very bottom of the cell. So she had actually pulled her abdomen out of the cell, and there was a little egg sticking out of her behind there. It was kind of a cool thing to see. But depending on what your beekeeping goals are, that influences how you split your hive and how often you split them and all of that good stuff. And then I have to preach a little bit about the importance of forage, not just for your honeybees, but for your neighborhood bees as well. I've turned my backyard into a certified backyard habitat, so I really leaned into native plantings, building habitat so that, you know, native bees have a place to overwinter and build their nests. It's taken about 5-6 years to reach platinum level certification for that, but it's definitely worth it, and I've learned a lot. And then also another really amazing opportunity that I've had is to work with my apiary land hosts to plant a ton of flowers, and it made all the difference for these bees last year. So I'm excited to see how they do this year. and I don't have to plant as much because everything reseeded itself. But those are some good plant resources if you have a place where you can plant large swaths of cover crops. BuzzCoverCropSeeds.com is an Oregon company. They're really great. Let's see, here's some other resources. The Bee Life Cycle Ready Reckoner is available on the pub website. I think it's under the resources menu. Print that out and keep it because I still use it. Just take a look at it. You'll know what I mean and why it will really help you when you're making splits. All right. Any questions?
Let me check the chat here.
Okay, we'll check the
Anybody on
chat.
the Zoom can,
The chat. I don't see anything in the chat, so no questions there. Any questions from the audience?
Brian,
How many splits do you do every year?
So last year I did maybe 16 or 17 in the springtime, and bees want what they want, and last year they wanted to swarm. And it just felt like, oh man, I kept going in and cutting out swarm cells, and then I'd go in a week later and then be making more. So, we can only do so much to try and control these wild creatures because it's just so deeply programmed into them to swarm. So just know, like, even if you try your very best to prevent them from swarming, they might still pull a fast one on you.
how about newer starting beekeepers? This is perfect person to,
Yes, because it's been a warmer February. I don't know, I guess we don't know how the rest of February is gonna play out, but when are you starting to like, what are you looking for when you just get in there and you're like, is it early March that you're making these splits, like the general weather that you're waiting at? You mentioned like 2 to 3 weeks of like wanting to make sure any queens could breed.
Yeah. So the bees are so smart. The really big clue that I look for from them is drones. Once those drones, like, even if you haven't gotten into your hive yet, but if you're out in your yard and you hear the drones, it's an unmistakable sound. Once the drones are flying, that means it's time, and they're gonna do it whether we're ready for it or not. So once there's drones, like, it's go time. And um I would say on average in our area, just in Portland metro area, we've seen swarms like on the swarm report, because I used to help run pub. Spring break, that's the earliest I've ever gotten a swarm call. So I would say if this weather pattern continues where it is just, it's warm. We're not really even having a winter. Um, if it continues to be this way, we're going to see drones sooner. And if that happens, then that means swarm season comes early. Let's see. Kyle in the chat asked if we could repeat the question. So the question is about because it's been so warm, and when we're thinking about when to split our bees and we're looking at the weather, 2 to 3 weeks ahead, when can we realistically think about making the split? And I would say, last week of March, first week of April is the sweet spot. And I'm sure we will get our usual little cold snap as soon as the fruit trees start to bud. But there's a lot blooming right now. I don't know, does Glenn still come and do the pollen report? Or the what's in bloom?
Not for a year or more.
Okay. Well, I can tell you guys some stuff that I've been noticing. So one Portland area native, it's called the beaked hazelnut, and it's not the same hazelnut that's used in our, hazelnut agriculture, for Oregon state nut. It's it's a small shrubby tree, but it has these wonderful cones of pollen that hang off of it, and they're about 2-3 inches long. They're all over the place now. So if you're seeing a lot of pollen, that's one of the pollen sources that they're getting. They're also witch hazel is starting to bloom. Heather is in full bloom. And I was shocked this morning to see that red flowering currants are starting to go. So that's another great food source early springtime for them. And crocus is starting to come up. So we are starting to get some good food sources for them. But I bet we'll get another one freeze before things really loosen up.
Anybody else? Oh, yep.
Recommend starting with like reserving 3 nukes for this coming season because it is warmer than every other year. So what would you recommend getting nukes?
Did you get?
Oh, for purchasing nukes? It's, you know what? It's really going to depend on who you buy them from. A lot of the nukes that people purchase are coming from commercial apiaries, and the commercial beekeepers right now, they are all in California for the almond pollination. And typically what happens is down there, they will split their hives and add mated queens to them. Or they'll do that as soon as they come back because all these hives are down there feeding on all of this almond blossom pollen and getting really big. So that's why a lot of them are able to have nukes earlier than a lot of the local producers. Like for me, if I make splits for sale, I don't really make them available for pickup until the 1st or 2nd week of May because I want to make sure that the bees have time to make a queen, for her to mate, and for her to start laying, so I know they're not getting a dud. But that's why a lot of, the larger nuke sellers are able to have nukes available, 1st, 2nd week of April. It's because their bees are already, up for the year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? One more thing, is Jess still here? Do you want to talk about gift guide?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
We are part of, I was invited a couple of years ago to be part of the Willamette Weeks Give Guide. It's a Greater Portland nonprofit end of year effort to get people to donate to nonprofits all over the city. It helps part of that. And we raised about $10,200. We do about 10,000. This is our 3rd year. We'll have one more year for sure in it. We tend to put a lot of money towards bee research at OSU, improvements at our apiary, supporting the Blanchet House apiary, where a lot of club and board members do a lot of work. And what I put into the email this week was if anyone has recommendations about what things and entities and missions that our club could continue or start supporting, we're open to those kinds of ideas. So be sure to think about that and let us know if you come across something that fits in with our mission statement that might be good for our club to be part of. And I would just add too, I'm shocked every year at how many donations are $10 and $20.
yeah,
By far, the vast majority of that $10,000 comes from just very small donations from Virginia, Hawaii. I have people having, I always send the thank you notes in the IRS, and I recognize people every year, there's a Diana Larson in Virginia every year, hundreds of dollars, we just have these fans all over the country that support us. It's kind of nice.
had the honor to pick up the check at the Give Guide celebration, and the total amount Give Guide gave was over $9 million.
Wow.
So their goal was 9 million, they hit 9.2. So, and that's all of these are, I assume, 20, 10, $50 donations for all these organizations. So it's an amazing program, really. So.
Are we gonna thank Mandy?
Thank
Mandy.
Oh. Thank you guys for listening to me.
Oh.
Are we able to get a copy of this slideshow?
Yes, can we get a
Oh
copy?
yeah, yeah. I'll send it to you, and then you can share it with them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Well,
Have
join
a
us at
beer
the
for
pub.
me.
You can join us at the pub right after. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining online and in person. And we hope you like the new format. Stick around and chat. So.
Very informative, very, very.